things are moving ahead. Things are definitely moving. I'm in touch with an ex-employee at the FDA in the United States, because we in Europe think that the US is well ahead of us, because they passed the FDA Modernization Act 2.0, and I think the FDA Modernization Act 3.0 may soon come through as well. But he explained to me that things are not moving ahead as smoothly as could be, because there's still some dinosaurs left at the FDA and in the administration. But that being as it may, things have definitely moved ahead. Now let's talk about Europe, and let's talk about the UK. You may have seen this new document put out by the Ministry of Science and Innovation, which is basically a rehash of Herbie's Law. In other words, give us 10 more years, give us 5 or 10 more years, and we'll slowly replace animal tests. That's not good enough. That's pulling the wool over people's eyes. The general public and some of the animal welfare community will fall for this. We don't fall for this. And if you look at this document, you'll see that it focuses only on replacing animal tests, toxicology tests, mostly. And that only accounts for 20% of all animal experimentation. The vast majority is basic research, applied research, which goes on in universities, and that's completely been ignored. So don't fall for this. So in other words, we still have our work cut out for us. And I've written a commentary of this document, which will soon be, well, it is online, but I'll make it more accessible for you, so that you can read it, you can use it, you can spread it on social media. Basically, it's a severe critique of this document, so that not everybody is fooled by it. So that's in the pipeline. And what we discussed earlier was the role of medical charities in providing a lifeline, providing funding to animal researchers at universities. We need to name and shame these medical charities. You all know who they are. It's the Cancer Research UK, the British Heart Foundation, and so forth. And I believe that Animal Aid has a booklet which identifies the main culprits. So I think that's an important campaign. Another important campaign is to promote EDM 187. So to get as many MPs as possible to sign the EDM, which calls for a science hearing in Parliament, not judged by MPs, most of whom have no science background, but judged by different experts in different fields of science. So that sort of is a sort of a broad strategy, and I think I'll leave it at that and let you ask more questions.
Do you mind if I ask a follow-up question?
Go ahead.
So, sorry, I think maybe I didn't express my original question very clearly, but I was interested to know a bit more, and I've asked Linda sort of in posts on Facebook about this, but I just really like to know more about this specific campaign that. Well, it's the name of the Facebook group is Campaign to Ban Animal Testing and Research in the UK. Is that right, Linda? I just wondered if, or somebody could say something about that. But putting that aside for a moment, I've been doing some outreach, street outreach, trying to communicate with the public about animal testing. There's a few of us have been doing it in Dorset, and in fact we're going out tomorrow to do a couple of hours as well. And I'm really alarmed by the publication of the roadmap and the follow-up media posts, particularly the stuff that's going around online. I mean, the RSPCA on Facebook put out a really erroneous and irresponsible post. And you only had to look at the thousands of comments, because everyone follows the RSPCA, to see that people think that it's the end of animal testing in the UK. And that's what they want to think, isn't it? So they're going to look at that and just see it as, yeah, it's being ended. So I think it makes our job as outreachers even harder, in a sense. Because, are people going to come up to us and say, well, actually, the government are banning it? So what would what would be if we have to sort of have a sort of counter argument ready for people who've heard about the strategy or the so-called roadmap, what would you say to a member of the public?
So the government is not addressing the validity of animal experiments. If you look at this government document, it says, let's work towards replacing animal experiments over the next 5 to 10 years. So that already gives 5 to 10 years of lifeline to animal researchers. They know that they can carry on doing what they're doing without being harassed. And this is what EDM 187 addresses. It addresses the validity of animal experiments. Animal experiments were never validated. And again, the critique that it took me about 8 hours to present, to work this out, to write it down, and you will very soon be given a web link to it that you can access. It breaks this thing down. People can see right through it, but people need to be they need to want to read this. So it's about 10 pages, 14 pages. It's not something on Instagram, 2 lines on Instagram or Facebook. It's something that people who are serious about wanting to see animal experiments end, they need to sit down and read this stuff and comprehend what's going on. So the government is saying business as usual. Animal experiments have saved thousands of lives, but we're making an effort to replace them because we don't want animals to suffer. But hey, animal experimentation is fine, it works. So that's the first myth we need to break down, that animal experiments have never been validated. We're comparing apples and oranges. In other words, what the government is saying, let's replace animal tests with, non-animal methods that give results that are as good as or better than the animal tests. That is crazy. You cannot apply animal tests to humans. If we want to find better drugs for people, safer drugs for people, you don't test on animals. You test on human-based test methods, like organs on chips. And organs on chips are very disturbing to industry because they are far better predictors of drug-induced liver injury than animal tests. And if you were to test every single prescription drug on the market today with the human liver on a chip, I would say that about 80% of the prescription drugs on the market would either have to be taken off the market, or they would have to have very serious warnings included in the little insert. So can you see the huge financial impact of just applying the liver on a chip? And in the United States, the FDA has said, we recognize the liver on a chip, the human liver on a chip is wonderful. So we're going to take it through a very strict validation process, which is going to take around 3 years. So they're already off the bat. We've lost 3 years. The public has lost 3 years. Public health has lost 3 years. They're doing everything in their power. Industry, the pharmaceutical industry has got its hands in the pockets of politicians, in the pockets of the regulatory authorities. They will do everything in their power to slow down the adoption of these fantastic human-based test methods. Now, the human-based test methods available today could replace all the toxicology tests used by the regulatory authorities. And I am struggling to find scientists on our side to say, here is our proposal or our counter proposal, because the animal researchers always say to us, how on earth are you going to replace the required routine animal tests? Well, you don't replace one animal test with one human-based test method. You replace one animal test with a battery of 4 or 5 human-based test methods, because then you get a level of prediction which is around 90%, while the animal tests, the level of prediction of animal test is under 50%. So it's a no-brainer. So because we are getting closer and closer to victory, I would say, the industry is going to dig their heels in. Animal researchers have said, okay, we'll give up monkeys. We might even give up dogs, but we're never going to give up rats and mice. That is our bread and butter. That's our bread and butter. So, be prepared for a tough fight, because that's what happens near the end. When you get close to the winning post, the other side is going to dig their heels in as much as possible. So I don't know if that helps, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, could you just repeat the percentage of drugs that you think would be taken off the market immediately if they'd been
the human liver on a chip?
Using the liver on the chip, yeah. Did you say 87% or something?
I said 80% off the top.
80%.
I just say that off the top of my head. Either taken off the market straight away, or have serious warnings included in the pamphlet.
Right. Thank you.
Can I just come in? While we've been talking about this, thanks, Sheila, for that. It just made a little thing ring in my head. The government have not explained to the public what the alternatives mean. Because when I've seen some of these posts going up from Animal Free Research, Cruelty Free International, the public's response has been, what are they going to test on then? Because the normal stuff that goes up is, shall we still test on criminals, and shall we test on criminals and paedophiles, blah, blah, blah. So the government, in their, when they release this document, they haven't addressed how are they going to explain to the public, just like Sheila was saying, how do we do an outreach now to explain to people, because the government has said, right, we're phasing in it out. What are we going to say to the public? Because the government's not saying anything, are they? They're not saying these methods are X, Y, and Z. It's just, I don't know. There's not enough detail for an average person in the public to understand what this means.
I think it should be clear to us that the pharmaceutical industry...
it's clear to me, but when you see posts, I get why people are confused, because they see, right, the government's phasing out animal testing, and so the person in the streets thinking, what are they going to use then if they're not going to use animals? Are people going to be guinea pigs? Because they haven't actually explained to the public any of it, have they?
No, but the pharmaceutical industry has the power, has the resources to completely replace animal testing today if it wanted to. So all the government is doing is helping the pharmaceutical industry to buy time to keep animal testing going on for another decade or two. Because I will give you the example of Botox. Okay, so the shareholders of the manufacture of Botox in the United States were persuaded by the Humane Society of the United States to replace the use of mice to test Botox with a non-animal, completely cell-based test method. And the shareholders got it. They said, yeah, makes sense. We're not going to, it's not going to affect our shares. In fact, the opposite. It's going to improve the image. The image is very, very important for the pharmaceutical industry, by the way. So it's going to improve our image. Mice are not going to suffer. And we've got a test method that is at least as good or better than the use of mice. So the manufacturer of Botox in the United States, they didn't wait for government approval. They didn't wait for validation. They did it themselves. They put their hand in their pocket. They paid to develop this non-animal cell-based method. And in a couple of years, they replaced the use of hundreds of thousands of mice used as living test tubes with this test method. And this is something we must not forget, and this is something that we can use. This is something we can tell people. The pharmaceutical industry, just by at the flicking their fingers, they can replace animal testing overnight. They don't want to do it because the animal tests allow them to get their drugs onto the market far quicker, and far more drugs will get onto the market than if they used organs on chips. Now, it gets even worse when we're talking about industrial chemicals, because at least for the pharmaceutical industry, there's a thing called pharmacovigilance, where when people get damaged by drug side effects, if they report it to their doctors and their doctors report it to the MHRA, eventually the drug will be taken off the market, or serious warnings will be included in the package. When it comes to industrial chemicals, there is no such thing as pharmacovigilance. There's no biomonitoring. Nobody checks your blood to see how many industrial chemicals you have in your body. And so what happens is a lot of industrial chemicals get onto the market very, very easily and very quickly. I'll give you one example. It's enough if you show that if you want to get a new chemical onto the market, let's say a pesticide, it's enough that you take an earthworm, a water flea, and a zebrafish, and you just use those three, and you say, look, my pesticide isn't going to cause that much harm to these animals. Can I have a marketing approval? And the marketing authority will say, yeah, that's fine. We're satisfied. And so what about the effect on humans? Well, just test a rat, because a rat is a mammal, and the rat is considered representative of a mammal, including humans, for industrial chemicals. And so you can imagine it's going to take 30 to 40 years for this pesticide or this industrial chemical to get taken off the market, because that's how long it takes usually for enough evidence to build up to show that this chemical, this pesticide, is having a disastrous effect on human health and the environment. So all of that is going to be challenged. When you use human organs on chips, when you use human placental cells, when you use cells that are specifically designed to pick out human side effects, you can imagine it's going to kill the chemical industry. It's going to kill the pesticide industry. It's also going to kill the pharmaceutical industry, because they're going to have far fewer drugs in the pipeline. So that is what we are up against. And the only thing stronger than these huge vested interests is informed public opinion. And that is what we are, and you, especially you, are doing so well. So that's what we're up against. Okay, we don't have the money that the pharmaceutical and the chemical industry have. We don't have their money. We don't have the political clout that they have. And we don't have the same influence on members of parliament that the industry has. So our best tool, our best weapon is informed public opinion. And when most public surveys show that people are not comfortable with animals suffering, especially if it's dogs, cats, monkeys. They don't care so much about cats, rats and mice. But, monkeys, dogs and cats and rabbits, people don't like that. So we have potentially a huge majority of the population. I mean, I can tell you, for example, in Belgium, there's massive public support to end animal experimentation. And groups in Belgium managed to put up posters, public posters, that say animal experimentation is torture. I don't think we can get away with that in the UK. But I'm just letting you know that in other countries, also, let's take the Netherlands. The Dutch government recently passed a law to invest money that was going to be used to enlarge a primate center. That money is going into non-animal methods. 30 million, I think it was, euros. So please be encouraged, because we don't know where the weak link is. We don't know how, what is going to make all the cards come crashing down. We have to just focus on what we are doing, what we do best, and that is inform people in every which way that we can. And the house of cards is going to come crashing down. I think I'm very optimistic. I think it's going to happen very soon, certainly in our lifetimes, but much sooner than that. We just have to keep hammering away and doing what we do best.
Thanks, Andre. Anybody else got any questions they'd like to come in with? Okay, I've got a couple, Andre. I think you may have already answered them outside of the meeting, but if you wouldn't mind just going over them again, if that's all right. So the first one is, and apologies, I don't know who this has come from. Can you please explain the difference between types of research, and particularly university research at all levels?
Okay,
Thank you.
3 broad categories. The first is not research, it's education and training. So that's dissections, that's teaching surgeons, and for that we have replacement for 99.9%. So that is a huge success story. Okay, the only places where the use of animals continues for dissection or training is where the instructor is still, their mindset is still in the 19th century. But as far as alternatives are concerned, in the field of education and training, we've won that. That's a huge success story. The only downside is that it accounts for about 1% of all animal use in science. But that's important, because people then go on to people who've trained using non-animal methods or alternatives. That's all they know afterwards. They will not go. In other words, the next generation won't know what using a real live animal to train on. So that's an unqualified success story. The next category is toxicology testing. So using animals as living test tubes to try human drugs, human industrial chemicals, and so forth. The available technology today can replace all of that. The only thing missing is the political will at the level of government, but more so at the level of industry. So industry will only budge based on public opinion. So if it's cosmetics, you can use public opinion. If it's medical drugs, you can't use public opinion. You've got to use shareholder opinion. And I gave the example of Botox. So if we can get our message across to shareholders in the pharmaceutical industry, that's going to accelerate things very, very much. Then the last category, by the way, so the toxicology that I talk about represents about 20% of all animal use in science. And then the final category is scientific research, most of which happens at universities, in universities. And you can break that down into basic research and applied research. So basic research is scientific curiosity, where researchers do things to animals and publish articles, and that's all they've been doing for the past 30 years. And they've received professorships and lots of money. Doesn't lead to human breakthroughs, but it keeps the system going. And then you have applied research, which is a researcher has found a molecule that he thinks might be useful to treat cancer. So he's going to test that molecule on rats and see what it does to rats. That's also, of course, a failed model, but the money involved and the careers behind this have kept this system going for the past 100 years. So that is sort of a summary of the different kinds or types of research.
Andre, with number 3, what's the percentage of animal?
Okay, so the scientific research accounts for at least 50% of the total, okay. But if we're talking universities, it's about 90%.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions before I present this other one that I've got here? Okay, I shall carry on until someone tells me to stop. Okay, sort of generic question, Andre, really. People are asking about the 3 Rs and why it is a disaster.
Okay, so the 3 Rs was proposed in 1959 by Russell and Birch, who I believe were honest, sincere biologists. At the time, it was certainly a breakthrough. It was completely ignored by the animal researchers. And it was only like in 1980 that the animal rights community found out about the 3 Rs, and they thought, well, this is great. And so the animal rights community pushed for the 3 Rs. And that's when the animal research community woke up and they thought, oh, yes, of course, let's talk about 3 Rs. Let's put forward the 3 Rs. Let's make it a mantra. So the 3 Rs was good in 1959. It's since completely out of date. It's out of date because the technology available in 2025 doesn't resemble the technology available in 1959. That's point number 1. Point number 2 is that the 3 Rs is anonymous with the word alternatives. So when people talk about alternatives, they're talking about the 3 Rs. When we talk about alternatives, we mean full replacement. We don't talk about reduction and refinement. So it's very confusing, and it's intentionally being used to confuse people. So an alternative is, for example, the use of mannequins, the use of virtual reality. That is an alternative to the use of live animals in education and training. The use of animals in toxicology testing, or the use of an alternative to the use of animals in toxicology testing, is a human-based test method. It's not more animal testing. So, and certainly not reduction, because you're still using the wrong model. Okay, if you use fewer rats, if you're going to use 100 rats instead of 120 rats to test the drug for cancer in people, that's reduction. That's not an alternative to good science. Good science would be you stop testing on rats and you focus on human patients, on human cells, on human surgical waste destined for incineration instead of rats and mice.
Fabulous. Thank you, Andre. There's a question in the chat. Excuse me. Does the Ministry of Defence use of animals come under ASPA? If so, are its stats available? Thank you for that question.
I think they are, because I mean, it's a long time ago since I was in the UK, and I remember finding experiments conducted at Porton Down published in PubMed. And that's how we found out about what they, the awful things being done to animals at Porton Down. But as far as I'm aware, it does come under ASPA. But I could be wrong, because as I say, this is going back a few years when I was working at Animal Aid. So if anybody wants to update that, please go ahead.
Okay, I'm sure that's something, Deb, we can look at. I don't have any more questions written down.
Can I just answer this,
Yep.
Nikki? I can answer a bit of that. I did a piece of work on a banned substance called Carbodex, and I did it because Charles River Tranent published by mistake all the versions of a piece of work that they were contracted to do by Philbro from America, but it was carried out here in the UK. So Carbodex is something that they add to animal feed pigs, and it's banned, and it's been banned in this country since 1999. I asked about this because by sheer fluke, I managed to find the first and only time a Home Office project license for doing this. So an international piece of work that came to Charles River using a banned substance here in the UK. So I asked a lot of questions, but you can see it on my FOI page. One of the things that the veterinary group came up with, that's the veterinary medicines people and others, they said you can actually apply for an exemption on a project license. Now, I'd never heard that before. So I would say that the stuff that goes on at Porton Down comes under the ASPA, but is exempted because of all sorts of other rules and regs. And what I can do is, if people are interested, I'll try and find it and put it all together and pop it up as a post in the next week or so on Facebook for us, so you can all see what I'm talking about. So Andre's right, it does come under the ASPA, but they have got a get out clause, which none of us knew anything about. And I spoke to Tanya about this, and she also thinks, and I think she'll probably pop up and say this, when she goes to do the protests at Vigo and Farmeron and Crown, I think they have exemptions there too. So that's why we can't find it. That's why we can't see the stuff, because and until that was declared by the veterinary group, we wouldn't have known that, none of us.
So Linda, just I'm going to be the one to ask the daft question. Just to clarify then, what you're saying is there are things that are going on that we just are never going to.
No,
we're not good. We can't have access to.
I can actually drop you. I'll go back and do this piece of work for you soon, because I know you're all going to be dead interested in this. But I'll find exactly what they said to me about exemption, because it took me aback. I was thinking, surely not. I understand them not telling us. I understand that. Don't agree with it, but I understand that. But no, I think it's a stage earlier than that, where they actually can be exempted from having a project license for this, and they don't sort of say it's national security or anything like, but they more or less imply it's that sort of stuff. And I think the Carbodox stuff, I just came across that purely by accident, and as a consequence asked some very difficult questions which lined up with they've got a number of banned substances, and of course Portendown uses a lot of banned substances. So I'll do that. I'll make a note to do that. Okay.
Thanks, Linda.
Okay.
Tanya, did you want to come in? You've unmuted. Yeah.
Well, yes, because at Envigo were Fisons, and Fisons was agrochemicals. So it started off that the Envigo in Belton was originally Fisons animal husbandry site, they used to call it. So they do a lot of agrochemicals at Envigo in Belton. When I did a bit of digging on that, you've got, they do breed beagles there and they do ship them out, and the amount that go out of there is staggering, actually, because I didn't realise, but they supply at least 1,000 beagles a year to laboratories. Now they supply, here we go, they supply AstraZeneca, a company called Spinogenics, and Agrochem, Pharma Agrochem. So we know that the beagles from MBR go to like LabCorp and Charles River, but Envigo supply completely different companies. They, as I say, they use AstraZeneca is like for inhaling pharma and biotech stuff, and Spinajex is ALS drug. What's ALS drug?
Yeah, I was wondering that.
It's
Is it for motor neuron
I know
disease?
the disease. It's a disease. Sclerotizing something.
Yeah, so they send a lot of beagles for ALS drug testing at Spinajex, and it says here that the Envigo beagles, 80 to 90% are tox studies, and it's the oral gavage 28 to 90 day, which I think is it's horrible, isn't it? Because
awful.
They choose beagles just for this oral gavage, horrible, shitty stuff. So yeah, so that surprised me that they do actually provide quite a lot of beagles. I didn't realise the amount, actually, but I've got the figures here. But it does say that it's a UK biotech, and they gavage for ALS drugs, and it's DOD funded, whatever that is.
Tanya, ALS is a form of motor neuron disease.
All right.
Oh.
So yeah, that's where they're going.
Okay, can I just bring Sheila in, because she's very patiently had her hand up for a while. Thank you.
Thank you. It's just, sorry, it's really hard, isn't it? I mean, hearing all this stuff. Yeah, Andre, just to come back, I think you said that currently it would take longer, the pipeline for getting a drug through the system, whatever the terminology is longer using NAMs than animals.
It wouldn't necessarily be longer, but it would reduce the number of candidates, because it would pick out side effects far more efficiently than animal tests. So in other words, if the pharmaceutical industry, let's say, had 10 drugs in the pipeline, 10 candidate drugs in the pipeline, and they were going to pass them through animal tests to go to clinical trials. If before going to clinical trials, they did the human liver on a chip, instead of 10, it might cut it down to 4.
Mm.
So that for them, that is very bad news.
Mm. Sorry, maybe I misunderstood. I thought you said it would take longer for them to get through the pipeline, but don't worry, it's fine. Maybe it was me misunderstanding what you said. Thank you.
I said the animal tests make it easier to get them through the pipeline.
Right. Okay.
Easier because
Easier,
you just tick
yeah.
the boxes. You know, you test it
Right.
on the beagle, on the rat, you get the data, and you show that to the MHRA, and they say that's fine. You can now go on to clinical trials. And of course, they don't include the human liver on a chip. And if they do, it's possible that some pharmaceutical companies do use human liver on a chip. The problem is they don't have to reveal the results to the MHRA. If the results don't suit them, they will bin those results. They are not obliged by law to divulge to the MHRA the fact that they used liver on a chip and the data that they got from the liver on a chip. That's how underhand the whole system is.
Thanks, Andre. I'm just picking up on the chat. Oh, very helpfully. DOD is the US Department of Defense. Thank you, Dominic. That's really helpful. Okay, just going back. Okay, do we have any idea about the number of animals used at Porton Down, or is that secret?
I think it'll be in the stats. You know, the Home Office report. So it won't say these experiments are what were conducted at Pfizer and these experiments conducted at Porton Down. It's just in the total number.
Yeah, I have just quickly Googled that. It said in 2017, it's a bit outdated, there was 3,865 animals used, but they also have the breeding centre for macaques. So, and I think, Debbie, we've discovered this in Wales. We're not sure that their reporting on their numbers is as accurate as it could be with breeding and all of that. So, okay, some comments, obviously sickening, yeah. Another comment in the chat. In general, the AV movement seems to avoid tackling the Ministry of Defence use. Is this because it's so secretive? Any thoughts, Andre?
It's a bit of a sacred cow because the Ministry of Defence will always say this is to save soldiers' lives, which it isn't. I mean, it's emotional blackmail once again, because if you look at the sort of experiments that they're conducting on animals, it doesn't tell you what that chemical is going to do to people. It's almost as if they're trying to give a false sense of security to the young men and women in uniform who defend this country by saying to them, you know, we've tested this gas on monkeys and we've got an antidote for it. And it works wonderfully well in monkeys. We don't know if it's going to work for you. Or we've given multiple vaccines to these monkeys because, you know, you're going to be in an environment where there's perhaps, biological warfare. So we want you to be covered. We want you to be protected against all these, harmful chemicals and harmful parasites and diseases. You may remember British soldiers who came back after the Iraq War in 1991. They were exposed to a cocktail of chemicals. First of all, their tents were sprayed with chemicals to keep mosquitoes away. But those are harmful chemicals. They were breathing in those chemicals. And then they were given cocktails of multiple vaccines. And I heard horror stories about, women soldiers giving birth to children with horrible birth defects and so on and so on. And a lot of soldiers coming back after the war complaining about chronic fatigue syndrome and being told, go and see a psychiatrist. It's all in your head. So it's awful. So it's not only disastrous for the animals, it's also a false sense of security for the young men and women in uniform.
Thanks, Andre. Another question in the chat. Okay, it's from Katie, who doesn't have a webcam or microphone. That's fine, Katie. Reading about animal-free research and Herbie's law, it sounds like they haven't proposed radical enough changes. What alternative organisations would you suggest that people support who want to see an end to the use of all animals in research? Thank you.
Well, the Alliance for Cruelty-Free Science, I would say, first of all. The problem is that most organizations, if they are charities, they cannot by law campaign for abolition. So they will be 3 R's. They won't campaign for abolition. And that's a huge problem, because for them, it's important just to keep the organization going. So to keep their members informed with magazines, but to think outside the box for most of them is too risky. I mean, how many times have we seen poster campaigns in the underground or bus stops? It's very, very rare. Most of these big organizations, they're top heavy. Their CEOs, may get £50,000 a year, which when you think it's public donated money, that's a significant part of the budget. And when you look at their annual report, it's not always obvious how much they're getting. It's sort of in the sort of the general expenses. So there is a sort of a conflict of interest of some of the big organizations. I'm sure they're well-meaning and they sincerely want to see animal experiment end, but their strategy is not science-based. I'll stop there.
Can I just say the strategy isn't science-based, it's welfareisms, all of them. Yeah. I get really pissed off because it is all about welfare. Bigger cages, put an extra little bit of this and that in the cages, that they're still in a bloody cage, and it's still welfareisms, and it should be abolitionist.
Right.
That's me.
Right.
I get that.
Yeah, good for you.
Thanks, Tanya. Thanks, Andre. A comment from Imi and Alan. We always used to tackle the Ministry of Defence, and this is something I would like to see us bring back to the public domain once again. Couldn't agree more.
That's not the low-hanging fruit. That's going to be difficult because the general public, for them, the Ministry of Defence is a sacred cow.
Yeah.
So that's going to be difficult, as if you ask the general public. I would go for trying to persuade shareholders in the pharmaceutical industry to stop funding animal experiments. I mean, Botox is a wonderful example because the shareholders, most of whom, probably like dogs, they couldn't care much about mice, and yet they were persuaded to replace the mice tests. So can you imagine if shareholders in the UK find out what is being done to beagles in laboratories, toxicological laboratories? That's a no-brainer. The challenge is how do we communicate directly with the shareholders, because the pharmaceutical industry are wise to this tactic. They will not let people like us anywhere near their shareholders. So that is a challenge.
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing, Andre, is I think I can also sort of feel people are a little bit, I mean, it's winter as well, sort of a tad deflated, because it just feels, it's such a hard slog, isn't it? I think, collectively in this room, we've probably been at this for hundreds of years together. Yeah. But what I'm hearing you, I think we often look to do something new, to do something different. And my biggest takeaway is that we actually carry on doing what we're doing, because it is effective, but we just have to keep strong, we have to keep together, and we just have to keep going with the same message. Yeah. Sheila, would you like to come in, lovely?
Sorry, me again. I mean, a couple of things. One is that, first of all, I'm pretty disappointed by the number of people in this session. And is this what you say, we carry on doing what we're doing, but how many people are really campaigning? How many people? I mean, I know there are people campaigning, but are there enough? I mean, Alan, I don't know if you want to say something about that. I mean, like, for example, your Facebook group, which, I and others here keep sharing posts in, you hardly ever see any reactions. Where is everyone? I mean, well, they're all, obviously, there's a lot of people behind Camp Beagle, and obviously that's a very important campaign, but it's only part of it, isn't it? So that's one thing. But another thing is just a thought, and I don't know whether this is something that's already been done in the past, but what about targeting looking at it from the point of view of the NHS? So targeting the ministry, what are they called? The Ministry for Health, or whatever it's called. Who's the
You mean Wes Streeting?
Wes Streeting.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
because
too difficult to
because
get them to engage. They have got a problem where the service is failing, the social care isn't good. They're not going to engage in that. The only good thing I can tell you about them is Chris Whitty. We all remember Chris Whitty. When he went back to do the work he does as his day job, he picked up all the postgrad research in the health service under it's a key program, and absolutely there is no animal testing in that work. It's not allowed. So it feels as if things aren't happening, but they are, and it's very difficult for us on the ground people to sort of understand that while it looks as if not much loads is going on. I mean, absolutely loads that we could share and share and share, but we can't do all of that because some of it is about relationships. So, for example, Andre works across the world with all sorts of people, and that's a relationship, and stuff has changed as a consequence of that with him and other people. So I wouldn't want you to think it's hopeless. It feels difficult because it is difficult. We are a few, they are many, and they've been here a very long time. But the science has changed. The science is significant. It is. When the organ on a chip came into its fruition, and it's been going, believe it or not, since 2005. Can you believe that? Everybody's behaving here as if it arrived yesterday, but it hasn't. It's been going for 20 years. What we see is significant change, and I think you need to speak these words of hope and change to yourself, because it's a hard road for the AR community. It is. It is a very hard road, and it's great that there are things like the MBR suppliers, and there's the Beagle people outside, but there are hundreds of others of us doing all sorts of stuff all across the country, all across the world. In places where Andre lives, there are loads of people doing things, and I think you can't grab them all together because there is so much to do. I think that's it. And what we have to do is pick our ground, put your stake in the ground, and stand and deliver it. I think that's the way forward for us.
Sorry, I didn't mean to be negative.
I wanted to give you hope. Really.
I mean, even
I think,
sorry, Tanya, Karen.
I think personally, my view is that everybody gets up in the morning, has their breakfast, goes to work, does whatever they've got to do. And spending time reading research to learn about the science isn't on their thingies. So you have different types of people who do different things within the AR community. So you'll have people that will just pop along to a protest, and that they're quite happy to do that. Then you'll have people who want to know all about the new scientific methods, and dig deep into that, but maybe don't want to go and protest. You have people who are quite happy to do an outreach. They're quite happy to go and stand in the middle of Oxford or Cambridge, and actually have the discussion with scientists or with whoever pops over to have the chat, and they're confident and happy to do that. So I think, you know, the people that support the people outside of MBR, you know, they're quite happy to click, you know, and to support and to share and to sign petitions and this, that, and the other, but maybe aren't interested in the science. As they just want to get the dogs out, they just want it to stop. But to be able to have a campaign, you need everything. You need people who are professionals on LinkedIn, who are going on to the UAR posts and to the European thingy posts and saying, well, actually, no, there's another way that you can do it. And it sort of embarrasses the animal technicians, because they're always coming and looking at my profile. So you have, within the movement, you have different people who have different skill sets, have different time slots that they can allocate to help. And so perhaps when you're looking, you're thinking, oh, you know, there's not many people in that group, but that group can have a massive impact. Before everybody came into the Zoom, one of the things that we were talking about was, I have one post on LinkedIn that's been viewed by 20,000 professional people just on, you know, calling out people for using animals when I've listed the actual replacements that they can use. So it's about everybody doing whatever they can in whatever capacity they can, and just going, thank you very much, keep it going, you know, and don't get disheartened if you think that you're not seeing the movement, because the movement is there. It is there, but people, not everyone understands that science has advanced. That's what I was saying earlier about people putting, use paedophiles, use criminals, because they're not understanding what the organ on a chip is, or microphysiological systems are, or all these different methods that they can use. People don't understand them, and they haven't probably got physical time to sit there when they've been to work all day or whatever and go, right, okay, I'll learn all about organ on a chip, because what's it going to mean to them? You know, they're going out, say, driving a bus or working in Sainsbury's, or, do you know what I mean? They're not going to want to learn all about these new methods, but they are quite happy to do a petition or to click and share on Facebook. So it's all about just accepting that everybody's different and everybody brings a different skill set, and we just have to sort of like do what we can when we can.
Thanks, Tanya. Could I bring Imi and Alan in, because they've been very patient with their hand up there. Thank you.
Oh,
Marvellous. Yeah, I was just going to, I mean, I totally reiterate or agree entirely with Tanya and Linda and what they've just said. There, you know, there are a phenomenal amount of people out there, and they are doing stuff all of the time that you may not be aware of, and we're all not aware of. The FEAT campaign itself was targeted at April, with April being World Day for Animals in Laboratories. So the idea there was to extend that for an entire month to gain as much public traction as we could, and to help highlight all of these people that we are now talking about that are out there doing stuff all of the time that nobody gets to see. So yeah, so the FEAT campaign was to have 1 month solid where everybody can get on board, everybody can get under the same umbrella, and everybody can force the topic into the public domain, because it's very hard to maintain that over 12 months. Everybody is always doing something. There's always things going on all of the time, and what feels like in the background, but they are always out there, and there are always people doing stuff either online or through petitioning or talking to government, or just standing outside laboratories or redecorating or doing whatever they're doing. People, and outside charity shops and stuff. People are always out there doing stuff. The whole purpose of the FEAT campaign was to show the grassroots momentum that is out there, and to have one I can't think what the word is, but have one central thing, like a banner to get under, just for everybody for that 1 month, just to show how much diversity there is and just how much there is going on all of the time. FEAT will expand, but April was just a particularly good target because it's centered around the World Day for Animals in Laboratories, and it just gave everybody that opportunity to show what they were up to. And and during the month of April, we had the FEAT logo and the activity that was going on that was so incredibly visible was phenomenal. And I know coming on, it will become international rather than just FEAT UK, because there were already so many people from different countries that wanted to get on board and wanted to expand the horizons. So, that is just one campaign, and that will just go from strength to strength. But has been said, and I will just reiterate one final time, there are people out there all of the time working so hard, and the science has changed now, and people are now catching up with that and getting on board with that. I mean, I see the end of animal testing very much sooner rather than later. I think the progression that's been made has been phenomenal over the last 20, 30, 40 years or whatever. And in the next few years, it's just going to accelerate so much, because now the industry are running out of excuses. And as Andre says, now is the time that there will be serious kickback, and there will be serious the digging in of heels, because they know the end is coming. And all we need to do is just keep giving it this. To me, it's like one final push, and they'll be gone. Definitely, I see it in a matter of a few years rather than, looking at lifetimes and things that we've looked at previously thinking this is going to take forever. I think we're now at that point where it's gone. We just got to keep kicking, and it'll be gone sooner than you can imagine. So I hope that's inspiring enough.
Hope so. Thank you, Alan.
Thanks, Alan.
I mean, I didn't mean to be negative, but and I do, even like standing out on the street for a couple of hours, and if I can just, it's the same with vegan outreach or any kind of outreach, is just if I can plant a seed in even one person's, mind, and give out 100 leaflets or whatever, then it's definitely worth it. I just wish there were more people here like now. It's a shame, but thanks.
Okay, I'm mindful of time, but I've got another question, Andre, if that's okay, and then maybe this can be the last one. Do you agree with Hans Roosh that some of the official anti-vivisection groups have been infiltrated by pro-vivisectionists in order to scupper progress?
Probably, but in some cases we're simply our worst own enemies, because we've fallen into this very comfortable routine of publishing magazines and feeding our members and getting their wills and legacies, and that just keeps the wheel turning and doesn't think outside the box, and doesn't rock the boat too much. So I think there has been infiltration, certainly in the past. I don't know how much infiltration is around today, but as I say, it's enough for us to be our own worst enemies. You don't need infiltrators. I'd just like to perhaps end by saying that we are all foot soldiers And as such, we don't necessarily see the bigger picture. And, you know, the fight against vivisection is not for the faint-hearted. It is the toughest nut to crack in all of the, you know, all of the different forms of animal abuse. This is the toughest nut to crack. It's not for the faint-hearted. I've seen so many people. I mean, I've campaigned for 45 years against animal experiments since I was a vet student. I've seen so many people come and go, you know, with burning passion to end animal experimentation. And because it didn't end quickly enough for them, they I think they suffered simply from burnout. They got, you know, they put so much time and effort and energy, and by normal standards, they should have seen some results, something. They didn't, and they burnt out. So it's not for the faint-hearted. I think what we need to do is to visualize the domino effect. Put that vision, send it out to the universe, because I think that's how animal experimentation is going to end. One domino is going to knock the next and the next and the next, and that will happen very, very quickly. It's just to get the first domino to fall. And I think we are, as Alan said, I think we're very, very close to that tipping point. So I very much like that image, that vision of a domino effect. When one domino goes, the rest are going to follow very, very quickly. So that first domino could be, you know, one country replacing animal testing. It could be one country doing it and then the others following. It could be, you know, so many different things. So the possibilities are limitless, are endless. But that's what I want to leave with you this evening, is this image of the domino effect. Send it out to the universe. Meditate on that. Focus on that, because that's what's going to happen. And that is what's going to accelerate the end of animal experimentation. Thank you.
Okay.